I'm going to call this meeting to order. This meeting is being recorded, so if anyone else is recording the meeting at this time, please let me know. Thank you for coming. It's great to see people here. And I'll take a roll. So Councillor Gordon. I am here. Thank you. Councillor Garrett.
I am 90% here.
Yeah, that's and Catherine, Councillor Golub, I am also here. Before I start a lot of meetings with clients, I will invite people to choose an object that represents the part of yourself that cannot be fully present. So if anyone wishes to do that, that's always an option, just to like set it there and it's represented. So
Trying to really think hard about that one.
yeah, just to
Your brain is not the object.
No.
no, not your, don't take your brain out of your head, but all right. So can I have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we do not need to do roll call because we are all present in person. So any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you for writing that down. I'll take public comment. Comment will be limited to 3 minutes, and I do keep a timer just to keep us on track. So we'll pull that out now. I will first take folks in person and then online. So the Western Massachusetts Trading Consortium? Got it. Okay. Would you like to, whoever put your names here?
Are we
One
supposed to
person.
wait for our ordinance to come up before?
Okay, so there's a couple of different things. One is I will hear from folks who are come to speak about the ordinance. It'll be easiest if there's like someone who you all choose to speak on behalf or one or two people. So it's not a large discussion. But if folks would like to give comment now, in addition, you are welcome to do so. And
We're not familiar with how.
yeah, so how meetings happen, how our meetings happen at appointments and ordinances at least, is that there's always a public comment period at the beginning of the agenda that anyone from the public can speak on any issue for a maximum of 3 minutes. So if you would also like to give comment about the ordinance before, then you're welcome to. Okay, yeah, okay.
Sorry.
Oh, you don't need to apologize. I'm happy to explain how our meetings happen. I'm glad that you're here. And then I think I saw Sarah Ahern. I'm not sure if that's.
They put their name in the chat.
You put your name, yeah. Would you like to give public comment or was that for talking about the ordinance?
I would like to do both if it pleases the chair.
Oh, I am pleased. That works for me. Everyone is
Okay.
welcome. Even if it's during the, even if you're going to speak on an ordinance, everyone is welcome to have their 3 minutes to speak on at the beginning.
Okay.
So I will please state your name and your address or general location, and I will have a timer here for 3 minutes.
Perfect, thank you. Sarah Ahern, 21 Mill Street, Greenfield, Mass. I'm here on behalf of the Ordinance Establishing Opioid Use and Prevention Commission. Full transparency, I'm also on the steering committee that created this document. I just really wanted to say that this has truly been a collaborative effort between the people directly impacted, the municipality partnership with Marianne Bullock and Board of Health Director Michael Thoreau, the mayor, CARES Mass, everybody that sort of like had a voice in this, but mainly the people impacted. As a person personally impacted, both at a personal level and a family level. This is, I think, the best we can do, aligning with the city charter and the settlement agreement. We were going for a low threshold commission that would really give the people that this is meant to abate the harms some kind of teeth to help make the decisions about how these funds are distributed. And I think that we had a very fair-minded process. Lots of voices were heard, and I think this document we all agreed on that was the best possible practices of what we're trying to do. And I was very humbled when I heard CARES Mass, who is through JSI, which the state subcontracts out to help municipalities, say in our last meeting that if we pass this ordinance, this will be upheld in the state as best practices because the people directly involved are at the center of the decision-making and partnership in accordance with the city charter. Also, the stipend, there's a lot of broad scope to what we do. And I think it's a fair-minded number to all the things that this commission is going to be tasked with. So I'm just here to be a part of the conversation and to say how proud I am of everybody that was on the steering committee. And I'm very proud of what we have accomplished. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to give comment, please put your name in the chat.
Michael said he's going to speak when the ordinance comes up.
And so I'll say that you're welcome to, Michael. And also this will be the first time that I'm facilitating a discussion with multiple people from the public about an ordinance. And I just ask, like I said earlier, I will do my best to facilitate that conversation and to have 6 different voices chiming in, maybe a lot, or 3. So just to be mindful about supporting us all in that process. So with that said, if there's anyone else who wants to make sure that your voice is heard, now you're welcome to put your name down. Okay, great. So moving on to public hearings, there are none. And can I have a motion for the mayor's appointments?
Do you want me to read it?
Yes, please.
Order number FY 25-055. The city council moved that it be ordered that the Greenfield City Council pursuant to Charter Section 2-10 affirms the following appointments by the mayor. Board of Health, Dr. Thomas Riley, term to expire December 31st, 2027, filling remainder of term of Ahmed Esfahani, who resigned in January 2025. Constable, David Payant, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing any of these names, term to expire December 31st, 2025, filling remainder of term of F. Peter Clark, deceased May 2023. Historical Commission, Terrence Steigers, term to expire December 31st, 2027. Majority vote required.
Second.
I'll just share for anyone who doesn't know what a constable is, because I didn't.
That was an interesting discussion.
They publicly post warrants for elections.
I think you might need to speak up to make sure.
Can you all hear me? Can you hear me up there? Yeah, okay. So that's what they do. And it's an appointed position for the city. So
It's the town crier, except they don't say anything anymore.
right. We'll just not all doing that. Okay. Yeah. So thank you, everyone, for supporting the town, the city.
Yeah.
Let's see, we have a doctor on the Board of Health.
Yeah, I think that's a great
That's
thing.
more medical professional on the Board of Health, but
Agreed. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes. 3? Yes. No no's, no abstentions. Okay. All right, so we are going to move on to the proposal for a new ordinance to establish an opioid use and prevention commission. Pulling that up. So how I'd like to do this is I'm just thinking. I'd like to invite one of you to start by sharing the intent and the purpose of this proposal. And then I'd like to go into questions from the committee. And before we start, I want to say that I think that I want to be really clear that this is something that I really want to see happen. And I'm going to have a lot of questions that may not be completely answered tonight. So I hope that the questions from the committee aren't taken as a sign of not wanting this to pass. I feel incredibly strongly that As Sarah shared, that people who have been impacted by the opioid crisis are the ones determining where these funds are expended. So there will probably, I know I have a lot of questions, and I imagine my colleagues might as well. So I just want to share that at the beginning. So if one of you would like to start with the intent, just like a minute or so, just to catch us up with your process and the intent and purpose, and then we'll go into questions from the committee.
I'm happy to start, or Sarah or Michael, if we didn't really organize this.
Right.
It's okay.
You can go
Whoever-
ahead, Barry, and I'm cool with you going.
Okay,
if-
I
if Michael wants
will.
to.
I will try to make it quick. So I'll just give a little history to why we went this route. So some of you might remember that some months ago, it came up that there was a question of where we wanted to place and how we wanted to place these funds. There's opioid settlement funds that the city is receiving over an 18-year period. There's very clear guidelines with some movement in those guidelines on how you can utilize them in creative ways to have best outcomes in prevention, treatment. There's 5 areas around substance use and recovery. We started the process initially with an ad hoc committee. We tried to pull it together and make some recommendations on how to use funds in the first year. And then we were really going to try to move it forward on a year-by-year basis. And we realized pretty quickly we didn't have the right group of people in the room, that didn't feel like there was an authentic voice representing those that were most impacted by the issues. So we sort of started from scratch, which we knew was going to take some time, but I think that we really intentionally pulled together a thoughtful group, many more people than are just in the room and here online. There's a bunch of people who couldn't be here, also from the city. Anna Altman, really, she helped orchestrate the meetings on an ongoing basis. So we held about a dozen meetings of this ad hoc group, and we really processed through like, what is the best way to do this? Is it held through a process of the city council? Is it held through the health department? Is there a committee that's created and implemented in through our charter? And eventually we landed on this ordinance, and we sought the help of CARES, like Sarah said, and the health department. And CARES offered us a lawyer who was specialized in municipal law. And like she said, they're hoping that we will be the first area to pass this, and then this will be something that will be implemented across the state. Other areas are struggling with this, and it's being contested how the funds are being used, if the funds are actually being used appropriately, and truly going to those that are most impacted by the opioid epidemic, and the ongoing fallout from it. And so this ordinance, we went back and forth multiple times as a group. There was input and buy-in from folks on the ground who deal with this every single day and are working in treatment and recovery with folks that are actively substance using and in long-term recovery. So we have a pretty good span. And the intent is really to have it be an initiative that is led continuously by those who are most affected by this issue for the ongoing 18 years. And to have a voice that feels balanced within the city, so that this, even if we end up in a situation like we have in our current day political landscape, where there's power that's imbalanced, that there is still a really strong voice from the public in this. And so that's all I'll say for now. But I just want to emphasize that this committee has put in a lot of hours. I'm not even talking about myself. I'm talking about people who are working 40-hour weeks in the field, and then coming to these meetings on top of that. So it's been a months-long process.
Thank you. Michael or Sarah, is there anything that you, not duplicating what Counselor Bullock shared, but anything else that feels really important to share?
I would just say that, like Councilor Bullock said, we did have a really good group. We really looked at this process as, this money is supposed to be spent on people affected from the opioid epidemic. So we really dug into that and really put a lot of effort into building a good ordinance that will set up a good committee that can really handle this and even handle things down the road that might come up that have to deal with this kind of just kind of in the nature of this work. And like Councilor Bullock said too, the state was very happy with the way we went about this and the way it actually looks like it's going to come out. Having a board with people that have the experience to deal with this, having community engagement with that board, and really being able to put forth a good recommendation to the mayor on what these funds should be spent on, I think is really what it's about. I mean, we're there to engage the community and figure out, what we want to do with this money and spend it on the people that the money's meant for. And I think we really took that to heart when we looked at this ordinance. That's all I really have to say for now, but I'm definitely happy to answer any questions as well.
Okay. So what I would like, thank you for that. And what I'd like to do is just hear if there's any immediate just response and then go through the ordinance and name a few questions. They may not be able to be completely answered tonight, but naming them for you. So I just want to share that, again, really grateful for all the hours that folks have put into this, knowing that life is hard right now and schedules are full. And also hearing that this is setting a precedent for the state, that this work that you're doing is very, very important, that we're all doing. And therefore even more important that this is done really, really well. And it is real. This looks great. My questions and actually our questions are tweaks on what you all have created. So anything else that you'd like to share before we go into asking questions?
No, I'll echo the gratitude for all
Yeah.
the work that's gone into this. It's really amazing.
Okay, so let's, just to keep it simple, I'm just gonna name section A, section 1A, any section, and like stop me when you have a question. Section 1B,
Oh, I'm sorry. You wanted me to stop
Yeah.
right now. I thought you
Yeah,
were saying.
interrupt me.
Question. Okay.
interrupt me with a question. You got a question?
I wrote a bunch of notes. And everything else.
Yeah, take your time to, let me know when you're ready for me to start. That just feels like the simplest way to go through. And if you have a question that we don't get to, or you're like, oh, I need to jump back, that's fine.
Okay, so the first thing I have in the first section.
Yeah, let's go through the first section. That sounds good.
Okay, so section 1C, I really, really appreciate that it's people, the composition I think is fantastic. And, again, thank you, Councilor Bullock, for kind of throwing a flag on the field when this came before the council and creating the opportunity to do this. The only thing about section C, and this is again the most minor of things, it might be helpful just to say how many members are on the committee. I added them up. I'm like, okay, how many people are on this committee? Okay, there's 8. Oh, that's even. Oh, wait, the mayor doesn't vote. So that makes it so it's a 7-person committee with the mayor on it. And so just maybe adding a line under, section C, just saying it will be a 7-year committee. And then the second.
7 member.
7, sorry. Yep.
For the.
No, appreciate it. And then the other part I was a little confused on was the last line of section 1C where it says 3-year terms, but 2 shall be appointed for 2-year terms. My guess is the intention here is to create a staggered term situation. And
Yes.
so, I've seen in other kind of authorizing language for various committees, that this, there will be 1 member appointed for 1 year. The first year the committee is created. There will be 1 for 2 years until we basically find ourselves in a position where everybody has the same terms, but they're staggered. And so if that's the intention, I think it might be worthwhile to kind of find another committee and then create that kind of like the first year this is made, it's going to work like this as far as the appointments are concerned until we get everybody at 3 or 2-year terms. So I guess the question in that is, are we hoping to have it be mostly 3-year terms because of, and so would it make sense to have staggered terms that end up having everybody appointed for 3 years? Yes, okay.
I can, yeah, the intention is when we discuss this, the reality was that 1 year is not long enough to implement this process. The first year is really going to be about building out what the public engagement process looks like, as well as if there's other topics that come to city council that need to address, need experts to address substance use and recovery issues. So the hope was 3 years. And if I recall correctly, when we met with the municipal lawyer who helped us draft this, I believe, and Michael, jump in here if you remember, but I think she didn't specify because the thought was that there might be people who were only wanting to commit for 2. So we would leave it open to say, especially if the mayor was in a, not in like a full term, like only had 2 years left on the, their term, then their appointment would be a 2-year term and that sort of thing.
I believe that's why we did it.
I would personally like this, the B and C to be clear. And also along with this, echoing what Counselor Garrett said, and then with B, it says the mayor or their designee should be non-voting, but then there's like not commas, like is the director and the Board of Health or that's a sentence that's hard to, like, is the director of the Board of Health and the director of the Department of Community and Economic Development or their designee, are they voting members? It's unclear. Can you let Jimmy into the room, please? It's unclear who's a voting member, who's not a voting member, what terms are coming in on, how long the terms are. And so I would like that part to be clearer. I would also offer that as the chair of this committee, when you make these revisions, if you want to send them to me in a Google Doc so I can look at them before our next meeting, I'd be happy to give you my input and say, do I feel like this is clear enough for the committee? Okay. Anything else about section 1?
So
Okay.
just can I be clear?
Sure.
So at the bottom of section B, I believe it
Go
does
ahead, yeah.
say they shall be voting members. Who shall be voting members? So the director of the Board of Health or the director of Community Development shall be voting members at the bottom of B.
Okay.
There's a grammatical, I
there's-
see what you're saying, Catherine.
Yeah.
There's grammatical funniness there that we need to put a period and start a new sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we
This
can
is a
clean that
grammar
up.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can clean that up.
And in fact, if you could please send me a Google Doc before committee chairs, just so that, like, before the 5-day rule, you can do this in like the next week. So it's to me before the 5-day rule with a couple of days for me to look at it. The 5-day rule is that the clerk asks counselors to submit things to them, but 5 days before the committee chairs meeting so that they have time to put it on the agenda. So if you could submit it to me a few days before committee chairs, so we can just make sure that that is landed well, that'd be great. Okay, section 2.
Wait, sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
just,
that's totally fine.
it's been a minute since I looked at this.
Yeah,
Is it clear who on here the mayor actually appoints? It's the people in section C, right?
Oh, yeah. It's actually say,
it doesn't say that.
It doesn't actually say right now that the people in section C are appointed by the mayor. It's only sort of alluded to in section D.
it says at the bottom, such individuals shall be appointed by the mayor for 3 years.
Oh, okay. Okay,
They have
Thank
to
you.
be
There you go.
appointed by the mayor based on our charter. as well.
okay, yeah,
Before we move on, I just want
thank
to
you.
be clear, are we asking them to do a staggered term situation? Or are we going to leave it with some 2-year terms and some 3-year terms? What is kind of the feeling here about that? I mean,
I mean, there are, like GSET, I know has different length of terms. I think there are a couple other commissions that do. I appreciate the argument that there are people who may want to take part in this who can't commit to 3 years, especially
yeah,
given, that we're talking about a population that has a lot of other challenges, a lot of other work, and for whatever way they're connected to this issue. So I'm okay with the 2-year terms
Yeah.
being an option.
The only reason I keep mentioning it is because the part of the goal of this is to prevent political interference.
Yeah.
And so if we have staggered terms, then if there's a mayor that doesn't want to do this at all and appoints, a troll, for lack of a more technical phrase, to the committee, then that would help insulate the committee from being kind of dominated by people that don't have the best interest of the committee in mind. It would leave some of the members there. It wouldn't be just like a clean slate all at once. You see what I'm saying?
So is the issue more the 2 years versus 3 years, or is it the staggering?
It's staggering. I really appreciate the intention of this to protect these funds
Yeah.
for the members of the community that need them the most. And I'm just wondering if that would be a way to help with that.
Mhm.
I think it would, but I'm also, if this is, I don't think there's anything wrong with doing it the way it is, written as such, but that's kind of my thinking on this, just again, to further keep it away from political interference because the term would be staggered.
I hadn't considered that, and I want to do whatever we can to protect the integrity of these funds and the group. So if I would offer that to you all to think about as a question, do you want the terms to be staggered? What do you think safeguards would body the most?
I had one other question that I almost forgot to ask because it was at the bottom of my list. What constitutes cause for removal? And so, I don't know if there's technical language in the city charter in general. But that word right there, it's like cause could mean, again, very different things depending on who the mayor is, and so again, just the same kind of mindset. How do we insulate this committee?
Could you look into that, Councillor Bullock?
There is basics, but I mean, to be honest, like you never really know what wild card is going to be thrown at you in
That's
any
fair.
council meeting,
Yeah.
and what a mayor would or wouldn't consider cause for removal. So I think that's one where we can't really decipher the interpretation of that. But there is like some specific things around conduct in the charter, but they're very broad.
And that makes sense because one person's cause is another person's not just cause. So that probably makes sense just to leave as it is.
I'm going to ask the clerk. I will put that on my homework list. Actually, Councilor Bullock, could you put that on your homework list? Thank you. Anything else from section 1? Okay, section 2. Questions? Yeah.
I wrote something for everything. So why the fiscal year? Why not January? I didn't really know what a fiscal year was until I got on city council, and I find it to be mind-boggling. It's July, right? That's when it starts. Yeah. And so I don't know. I think why not just January? Is it because of the dispensation of funds? Is that the idea? Yes.
Yeah. So basically, the money is allocated through the state system on a schedule, and we want to follow the fiscal year schedule.
Okay, that makes sense. I was wondering if it was something like that, but let's see. Do you have questions, Catherine? Because I could just keep talking.
You take your turn and I'll go next.
Okay, on section B, the part about quarterly, I don't think it would hurt to be more specific, just so it's predictable for the public who might be interested. So like meeting quarterly, I can understand that the commission may not need to meet every month. But if we specify there would be a meeting in like January, April, July, and October, for example, that would give some predictability to members of the public about when this commission is going to be making decisions. And so if folks are open to that, it doesn't have to be those days or those months, but considering the fiscal year starts in July, that would make sense. And I just kind of went 3 months through. I don't know if that makes sense to folks. But again, just kind of the transparency element of it.
I think it just might be a little hard with some of the people that we're gonna have. So
Okay.
like the majority of the committee is, either people with lived experience or people that lost someone or people that are in that kind of
Do you want to?
the job structure. And I feel like if we set it to certain things, we might lose people and it might kind of shoestring us into being, it's gonna be hard to find some people, I think, sometimes too. So
Can
we
we-
kind of left it at quarterly just to reassure that they were going to meet, at least on that structure.
And
Can-
sorry, I'll just share. Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I just want to make a suggestion that maybe, instead of, I agree with what Michael just said, but also, at a frequency to be determined on, upon creation of the commission, so that the commission, once we're formed, can meet and decide, in accordance with the open meeting laws and things that we're going to have to follow, if this is approved. I think that's probably a better way of just saying, whatever legal language needs to be in there, that doesn't kind of, tie us down, what Michael said. And, just honoring the fact that the folks impacted, I work 40 hours, and some of the folks that are on this committee have full-time jobs, and managing other things, families, children, all the things. And this is something that we're doing, on our personal time. So thank you.
And
Yeah,
I'll just
I-
say one more thing about that. Sorry. So we actually discussed this. We went back and forth about like months and when and how. And because of specific events that are scheduled within the community that happen that might take like all hands on deck from certain organizations or city departments, we didn't want to put specific dates in there. What was suggested to us from the municipal lawyer that we worked with was to keep it broad, because what we want is we want this commission to really be able to hone in on the procedures and policies for enacting this work. And so absolutely, when we get to like call, and we hope to publicize a call for people to apply into this commission more broadly than I've normally seen commission appointments be publicized. And so yes, we would absolutely say the commitment looks like this once we get down into the nitty-gritty of procedural work for this group.
Okay.
Yeah, I do think Sarah's suggestion is a really good one, just to make it clearer who makes the decision about cadence of meetings.
Yeah, I think that's persuasive.
Yeah. Any more questions, John?
I mean, I can just,
Okay.
the stipend number, I think, is gonna be tough to pass the full council with, to put it mildly. I don't think that when there's a $3,000 stipend and the counselors are making less than 2,000, it's likely to pass. So I appreciate how much work is gonna go into this. And I think this is genuinely probably too little to pay anyone for volunteering, and, that's $21,000, with the 7 members. And again, as much as I would love to see this happen, I also know that, Councilor Bullock, you mentioned the environment we're in right now, it's not going to get fiscally easier. And so as much as I really want to give everyone on the commission this amount of money, I don't think we're going to be able to. And I hate saying that genuinely, and I hate being the one that brings it up. But I am sure that this was looked at with a lot of care and detail, and I'm not trying to dismiss it at all. I saw that my eyes kind of popped at it. I'm like, uh-oh. Most of the committees in town that are voluntary, and so this is going to be something that I think they're going to get a lot of skepticism around.
Yeah.
I'd like to address that. The funds, including in the abatement settlement, is administrative costs.
Okay.
So the $3,000 stipend is going to be pulled from the abatement funds and not the city's budget. That's helpful.
That's definitely helpful.
Yeah, this whole commission is self-funded, so
Okay.
I asked very specific financial questions of the lawyer that we were working with, specifically because when this came before council floor, even more than just a couple months ago, like last year, we were told that like a counselor made a statement that these funds couldn't be used as direct to family dollars, but actually they can be used for direct to family dollars, and the best practices that are coming out across the country are investing directly in people that have been affected. And so I I am prepared to like go hard at council for this. Like $3,000 is minimal in order for people to be able to make a commitment. They are often going to have to find childcare because there's sensitive topics that are going to be discussed in these meetings. You can't just ask your childcare provider to volunteer. this is a real investment in our community that we actually don't have to decide to make because the pot of money is already there. And it's for the exact people who are going to be receiving these funds to do the work. And so, yeah, it's more than I make as a city councilor. And like, I don't care. Like, I actually would rather have my money, the money spent on, you know, this type of thing, but we don't have to make that kind of choice. And so what I would ask of you is to be an optimist in this situation, and to trust the work of the committee who thoughtfully thought about this number and were prudent in thinking about how many hours it's going to take to engage community in an authentic and real way. And $3,000 is minimal. It's minimal. Like the way I'm going to try to say this as carefully as I can. The way that people with lived experience who out themselves in the community as being in recovery or struggling with substance use are treated in professional spaces is often deplorable. And I say that as someone who's worked in Greenfield social services on the ground and been in meetings. They often are trapped where you can't get like a higher management level, director level position because they've outed themselves. Some organizations like those that are present have started to change that dynamic and stigma around that, but it's very real. And so to ask folks to do this work, it takes a lot. And I think that it is a minimal investment in the end.
I just want to say I
No-
agree as well.
Yeah,
Um,
no city person will get payment. So if you're a city employee, city councilor, if you're like a city employee, you don't get paid. It's just the commission members who are not city employees.
Yeah, and I just want to add that this was really thought out as this money is actually going directly to these people that the money's meant for, that are going to be on this committee, you know, putting their heart into this work. And again, I think it's a pretty minimal amount. But I think the council needs to look past that this isn't coming from the city of Greenfield budget, that this is actually going directly to what the money's meant to go for. So I hope they, you know, they look past the amount and just look at that it's being used in the way it's supposed to be used.
Yeah, I think those arguments are definitely going to be helpful. I just, optimism aside, I'm just like walking through the council meeting next week about this in my head. And I think you are prepared, and that's helpful.
I mean, to me, it's a perfectly reasonable
Yeah.
and in fact, far too small number. Right, but yeah, I shared the question of where the money was coming from, because obviously anything with, city budgetary implications, we do need to really think about. But if it's coming from the abatement funds themselves, then I think that that's totally fine.
It is, and I'm sorry, do you anticipate that we will?
No,
No, I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
misspoke.
okay,
I
great.
meant,
this will not come to council next week.
Okay, great,
Um,
because
Yeah.
I didn't mean to give you a heart attack.
Yeah.
our council meeting conflicts with our school band concert on
Oh,
Wednesday,
no.
so it's unfortunate.
A few thoughts about this. I just want to say that I came before you spoke, Counselor Bullock. I feel strongly ambivalent, but far towards the side of supporting this. Just given how little, I mean, we do a part-time job for basically no money, and so do the school committee members, and all the boards and commissions that are not funded. And so strongly ambivalent, feeling like, can we get the votes on this? And also that this is in alignment with the intent of the ordinance, that this money is compensating hard work. And like Counselor Gordon, you said, it's relatively little. And I think the question needs to be called on how much the counselors are paid, but I think that that's a separate question, and that you all shouldn't be compensated from these funds because we aren't able to be compensated for our work adequately. Have you talked to the mayor about these funds? Is she aware of this line in this ordinance?
Yeah,
And is she
the mayor's been a part of this and has seen this ordinance, and my understanding is that she's in full support of what we have in front of you.
Okay. Okay. That would be also helpful probably for her when she speaks before we vote on this, for her to say that. That would be helpful if she is indeed, and I hope that she is. Okay. Any other discussion? Just keeping it efficient. I hear that we could talk for a very long time on this, and I'm also really really want to respect your time here for the recycling ordinance. So, anything else about that, the line on the funding? Okay, I did have two other questions on E and F. E is the city shall provide adequate municipal administrative support. I think it'd be helpful to know what department is providing that support, and for that to be stated, it sounds like that's the health department. But
You don't think it would vary depending on the support that's needed?
We
it
do.
may,
will
yeah,
vary. We do.
it'll vary. Okay, then that's fair. And the city shall provide training and orientation. Do you know who will provide that training and orientation?
The idea is Kathy Scott, that would be similar to the council like orientation, that she could provide like a 1 hour quick and dirty. Here's how our charter works, and here's how commission works.
So I think it would be helpful to say the city clerk's office, just.
Yeah, I also have questions about that section too. So if it ends up being the city clerk, I wonder, if the abatement funds can be used to help pay for the members of the commission, could we compensate Kathy for her time on this?
It's
maybe
really just like an hour or two,
Yeah.
though. I don't know if that's.
I think that would be
Right.
included in the administrative costs, so I think that's in alignment with the settlement agreement, because it's considered an administrative cost. So the funds could absolutely go towards, supporting Kathy, adding, maybe a few hours of her time, because I'm sure that not everybody's gonna be able to maybe attend at the same time, but yeah, absolutely, it's in accordance with the settlement agreement.
Yeah, that can fall under the administrative cost part.
I just think that we do want to be careful. I appreciate that. And I think that's great. And I think we want to be careful about requiring newly established commissions to compensate
Yeah.
the city for the
Right.
city's time. Like that's not a precedent that we want to set.
Yeah, I'm just worried about
So,
the clerk's office
but-
being overwhelmed administratively.
Right, that's a
because they
fair
can
concern.
do a lot already, it's.
Yeah.
Yeah. I honestly do not know. This is a question. But what is for other bodies, how much support that they receive? And that's a good question for the clerk. I'm writing it down for myself. Okay, anything else from section 2? Section 3? So my first question was, the commission shall study the opioid crises. It feels like a really big scope. And it feels like outside of the scope of the commission potentially. And I'm curious, how do they study it? And how does this overlap with other bodies? It feels a little bit like an unwieldy paragraph to actually expect the commission to take on.
I think it's important to remember the context as well, that the opiate, or rather the substance use epidemic is consistently evolving. We're now in wave 5. It's not stopped, right? So involving the people with lived and living experience to sort of lead that conversation, with sort of like a feet on the ground. I don't like to use militarist language, feet on the ground of people with lived living experience that can look at how it's evolving, how we can guide, our city, our state, in this topic. And then the data collected will be from people with lived and living experience that are still in this substance use epidemic, which is predominantly affecting Black and brown folks who overdose rates are continuing to rise. I know that some of you probably heard in the news that there was a significant reduction in overdose deaths nationally, but it's for people that look like me. So I just want to uphold that it's not over. It's continuing to evolve with different substances, different adulterants in our drug supply. So it is broad, but it really, the settlement, alignment is to have those people affected and looking at different ways that this affects our community, the social determinants of health and how our municipality and their partnership with the recovery community can look at those things to the people that are currently and still being impacted. So it is broad for a reason, and I'm definitely not a municipal lawyer, but so I definitely want to hear like what some edits would be, but that's really the intent of the study.
I can share one other thing that I think is key about that piece is that the goal of this and intent of this was not just to like figure out how the money was spent. The
Right.
goal was to create a body within the city that was focusing on issues related to the opioid epidemic and substance use and recovery. And so that anytime there is something that crosses that threshold, we don't need to have someone come to us who is not representative of the population or demographic that they're talking about. And so it's really great when our health department can come and speak to us about issues. It's really great when our police department can come and speak to us about issues. But if we are going to look at issues of substance use and the opioid epidemic, having a commission, and I can't believe we actually don't have one based on what Greenfield has gone through over the last, 15 years. um Having a body that can come and speak to that with the city and for the city. So if there's a question that the mayor has, she can call upon this body and that can have influence over what she's doing. And that was a big piece of what CARES wanted to see in this ordinance, was a city having a body that was empowered and had some teeth to help steer in the direction of harm reduction, prevention, recovery, and long-term investment in people. And so that was really what that was. These are people who are already studying the opioid epidemic, and now we're creating a body who can come speak to it when the city needs it.
I guess my concern is that the success of an organization or a group or a body of people is greatly influenced by how clearly they name their task. And so my concern is that by naming it overly broadly, it may not be possible to do what you're saying that you're taking on, and that I really want you all to be set up for success. And so I may be wordsmithing, but I'm really advocating for like there's, I mean, it makes sense to me that understanding and learning and et cetera is an important part of what you all do. And yeah, and I would be willing to vote yes on it saying study. I'm just really advocating for you all, like setting yourself up for success. And the advising, the recommending, the next parts totally make sense. And I would assume that those parts would be based upon understanding and learning. I'm just cautioning you all to to be really specific about what your tasks are as you start so that you can be really successful with it.
So just to speak to that for a second, I totally understand. But in my experience in writing ordinances, there's certain things that that just have to be kind of broad, and then there's things that you obviously want more clear. But in the thinking of this, we made it a little broader because in the end, when the committee forms, they'll have more of a central direction that they're going to make. But if we kind of put it in the ordinance, then the ordinance kind of sets that tone that that's all it's ever going to be used for. So trying to keep it broad lets us work with it. I mean, it doesn't mean that, that's all we have to do is study. Like I said, when the committee gets made, we can obviously come up with more things and really focus in on certain areas. But from the legal aspect in writing the ordinance, if we kind of say we're only going to focus on opioid abatement money, like Counselor Bullock said, if it comes up down the road that we want to shift gears and focus on something else that doesn't really have to deal with that money, if we write in the ordinance that that's all we're dealing with, then we can't kind of broaden our aspect down the road. We would be kind of stuck into what we have written.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
kind of why we kind of kept it broad.
Like I said, I would vote yes on this language. I'm just really, and that makes sense to me. And really wanting you all to be set up for success. Okay, any other?
For what it's worth, I will say, like, I'm looking at the Human Rights Commission
Mhm.
charter and
Right.
like they're, you know, the first thing in their, under their powers is to obtain information and documents as necessary, essentially, like
Right.
also very broad, right?
Right.
But I think that because I completely appreciate the point you're making, and yeah, I think that it being up to the commission to kind of flesh out what it actually means makes sense to me rather than necessarily being super specific about it. So it is a balance.
I appreciate the language as it sits, and I honestly, the opioid crisis is even broader than this. You know, they just don't mention of education specifically, for example. And so having the commission be able to kind of look at the various areas that are important to this as they become more prevalent or prominent, I think it's really valuable. And because it goes and it's more specific in the remaining parts of the language, I think it's, I appreciate what, Director Thoreau just said. And I wouldn't change that language if it was up to me. I'd be happy to see it stay intact.
Other questions about section 3?
The only other thing I had was under a little c there. I had to look up the state subdivision agreement, and it was a really interesting read. I know that you folks are deeply familiar with it. It may be helpful, and again, I don't know how many folks who aren't involved directly with the commission would read this, but there were, I think, 7 kind of like bold typed headings, and just, kind of naming some of those, like I'm looking at prevent misuse of opioids and implement prevention educations for pregnant or parenting women and their families. And that's really like a very minor thing. It'd just be kind of educational for those that were ignorant of the state subdivision study like I was. Just to kind of, again, just make it even clearer, like these are the documents we're looking at. If you haven't read the state subdivision agreement, here they are. But that's not, it references it, so that's probably sufficient as far as a group focus. But again, for members of for a public facing document, I think it could be potentially helpful. That's my last note.
That was intentional as well, because as time has gone on, the parameters around how the funds can be used in that agreement have shifted.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah, so they've gotten like more specific in some areas and more broad in other areas. And so and there's probably that subdivision agreement you looked at, and then there's like an even denser like like municipal guidance that was put out by the state, which is constantly changing. So yeah, ideally we would, and they change and you can Google them. And we're hoping, because there's like this other settlement that's maybe going to give us another pot of money that's similar to this that's coming, that there'll be more guidance put into that agreement about how funds can be spent. Like, if we get a lot more money, like we could actually do something with housing or, yeah. So that's a shifting document by the state.
I really appreciate how many of these questions you guys have anticipated. Like, I'm very impressed, honestly, so.
You have any questions? Okay. I'm just reading through my questions to see if there's. Just wondering why that sentence was bold. But that's
Yeah, I did
probably-
wonder that too, actually. In what are we in section 3, letter B? Why is that sentence bold? Just
That may just be a holdover from editing.
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And And was also curious, the burial fund, but we don't need to go into it in much depth. I am curious about why the burial fund as opposed to other things, what the decision-making process was on that, but I know that we're limited for time.
I can answer that really
Yeah.
succinctly. Over the several community engagement sessions that were held, this was consistently identified as something that the community wanted. And also the city of Boston just passed theirs, which they have a more broader scope. Meaning it's not just for the burial of a lost someone, it's to support the family. Say that it was a parent or somebody, the only job holder. They had a broad scope. So just to give you context of legality, and that's how we came about to put that in there. We want it codified so that it couldn't be changed politically.
And
Great.
one other thing is we wanted to be able to do it soon. Like people are actively dying, and there has been requests from families over the past year to help with burial funds. And so we don't want anyone else to be in that position while we codify our procedures and our engagement process. We want to be able to utilize the money we have for folks that need it immediately to lift some of that burden when it happens.
Any other questions? Okay. So you'll send me the Google Doc with this before we meet this. I take that back, before committee chairs, a few days before committee chairs.
Yes, we
Okay.
will make edits
Thank
and
you.
get it to you before committee chairs, or
Great.
before the
Okay.
5-day rule for committee chairs.
Okay, that's exactly what I need. Thank you. Any other questions? Any other discussion?
Were there other folks in the room who wanted to speak to this?
Yeah.
Just want to make sure
I had
that,
something earlier, but you're past that question now.
Does it still feel like it hasn't been addressed?
No, I was just going to respond to one of the questions. But
Yeah.
it seems like you guys feel like your question was answered with the
Yeah.
responses that were given.
Yeah.
So,
I personally,
yeah.
yeah, does that feel good enough?
yeah, I was
Yeah.
just going, again, I was just going to answer one of the questions, but if you all feel that you have asked all your questions.
Yeah.
then
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel good.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for the time.
Yeah, and thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Even though we were focused up here, I really appreciate your presence. Yeah. Yeah, okay, I think we're complete. Go have a good night.
Thank you all
Thank you,
so much.
guys.
Good night.
Thank
Thank
you
you
all.
for your time on this.
And the work.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you all for your time, waiting and sitting here.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
17 pages.
I read a bunch of words. So, would you like me to
You would
start?
like to come join
Yes,
us?
now we want to talk about recycling. You're welcome to stay and listen to recycling.
Something I don't know about recycling.
Thank you all.
See you soon.
First thing I can do is sit.
Have a good night. That was that.
Right.
All right,
All right. Hello.
here we are.
Yes. Would you
About-
want to do the same thing where you want to just like share very briefly purpose and intent and then we
We will
can
do
go
that.
through
And then we can go through the ordinance
Yeah.
and questions, yeah,
That sounds
because I
great.
can tell you some of the history and,
Okay,
because since I developed it.
great.
Perfect. Okay, so as we all know, it was a year ago this month that we signed a grant to go to single stream recycling. And we all knew that we had to make changes to the ordinance to line up with the automated single stream.
It went totally smoothly.
And as we open the ordinance, it includes trash, it includes things at the transfer station, it includes fees. I swept down through it real quick and I'm like, no, this is gonna be 5,000 strikeouts, trying to figure out what we're changing, what we're not. So to begin with, I want to thank Councilor Healy for sponsoring the ordinance and Athena's hard work on this also. There's actually a lot of work that went into it behind the scenes, especially when we decided to strike out the whole current ordinance and we've rewritten a brand new ordinance, chapter 372. There's still a lot of things in the new ordinance that were in the old.
Yep.
The biggest changes is being more specific
I think you go back to 2005, 2011, when we last updated this ordinance. So a lot has changed regulatory, EPA, DEP, what's accepted, what's not for so on and so forth, for materials. So it was much easier, I think, for everybody just to throw the old one right out and start over. So that was the basic reason why we went into the ordinance, just to, administer the new recycling program. But while we were at it, it's all under the same one rather than come back later and jump into 10, 12 more sections down the road. I know we're in an ordinance review, but we just decided to go this route. So that's where we're at. We took information from other communities. I should say Athena did some background stuff, and so did Councilor Healy, on how are other communities doing their single stream. And we pulled different pieces from other communities, off the top of my head, Springfield, community in Wisconsin. Athena went all over the United States.
So
Yeah, we have that.
We can go over that.
So a lot of information, a lot of stuff became more descriptive, like how we handled the transfer station. There's not a transfer station policy, but there's rules. But we made things more specific in the ordinance. As I heard in our group, we needed a little more teeth because things were too gray on dealing with different things on curbside, dealing with things at the transfer station. So we made things a lot more specific. You'll see that the ordinance is considerably longer than the original, but rightfully so. We tried to keep it as short as we could, but we addressed all the things that we felt that needed to be addressed going forward. So if we go to automated trash pickup at some point, it'll be minor changes to the ordinance if we go that route down the road. So the main focus was the recycling, but everything's been updated. It even mentions sludge, which is a solid waste too. There's a small piece in here, but most of that is written in the sewer use regulations anyways, but it is mentioned in here because it is a solid waste under the definition. If I may, one real quick update, because I've been receiving a million emails and questions wherever I go, what's going on with the federal funding?
Right.
So we received our tractor trailer and the trailer to haul the recycling. It's in place, it's here.
Great.
All three of our recycling trucks are just over the Canadian border having their bodies put on. They're right on schedule. We expect them probably next month, thereabouts.
Hopefully,
And-
no
and-
tariffs at it.
And also, our Swiffer outreach coordinator who was hired under the grant, worth $1 million. He's done a fantastic job of public outreach in all these meetings during the day and meeting at the senior center. I can't say enough. I mean, it's outstanding. But anyways, we had spent $1.4 million on the trucks, the outreach coordinator salary and everything. So we sent it off. We got reimbursed.
Great.
So that's already
that was,
We were sweating.
well, I mean,
We were really sweating.
I mean, I tried to keep a cool head about it, thinking we have a signed contract with the federal government, but who knows?
Right, yeah.
So, and rightfully so, everybody's saying, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do if we don't get reimbursed? Well, I mean, we had to commit to the trucks a year ago, right? I mean, I think I signed the contracts the next day after the council meeting because they were gonna be a year out and better. So, that's good news. We'll be ordering the toters soon.
Yeah.
And then the intent is to roll this out. We're gonna have to do training of the drivers and everything, but the intent is to roll this out within the first couple of weeks of July. That's our target right now. It makes sense the first day of the fiscal year, our first week or two. So that's our target as of right now. So that's the update on the grant itself, it was all good news so far. We're rolling along. We're on schedule. So
That's fantastic.
yeah.
And we've had hundreds of people at our meetings, our public
Yeah.
meetings, and Sean's outreach. And if you want, we have a website, if you've all been to it, but tell everybody about it. It's really good. And it has all of our meetings are recorded in there. And so, and Sean's schedule and where he's doing his outreach.
Great.
Yeah, I watched a recording of one of the meetings. I was really impressed.
Yeah, it's going really well. He's just this quarter, because we have to do our quarterly report at the end of the month, he had over 600 engagements with
Great.
people, and he's
Nice.
focusing a lot on people with disabilities and elderly, the
Okay.
senior centers. And
It's fantastic.
And his phone calls in the office are really ramping up now because we're getting close. As he presents in these meetings, we're getting close. The trucks are on their way. And we put some stuff out on Facebook when the tractor arrived and it triggered a bunch of phone calls. So
And Matt's really good about promoting
Yes,
it all.
and-
and
yeah.
working with-
Great.
I apologize for not mentioning Matt. He's in the background doing a lot of work
Fabulous, yeah.
with Sean.
Background of a lot of different.
Yeah.
We really rely on him. And our main goal right now is to get people to decide on what size cart they want.
Right.
Yeah.
And how many carts if they have at like their council meeting here needs like 10 of them.
Whoa.
But yeah, just to get people to visualize what they're generating now and how much cardboard, because everything has to go in the cart. And so that's what we really focus on. with the
Great.
meetings.
It actually might be 3. Now that-
Visualize.
Yeah, I forgot about the Amazon wild card.
For the ordinance, there's a cost for
Holidays,
extra.
I didn't see it. I didn't see it.
A nominal fee.
And we've done a couple videos now, and so those are on our website. We did one of cart placement in snow, because we took advantage of our snow days, and it's really a good video.
Yeah.
Showing that out to people.
So, I mean, to introduce the team a little bit, you have Paul Newell, the deputy director, Lenny Fritz, who's the solid waste supervisor at the transfer station. Matt's involved, Athena, of course, myself, and Sean. We meet every other week on this. So there's a lot of behind the scenes, catching up, making changes, figuring out the carts. The carts are the tough part because, we've had a lot of folks come in and look at the carts, look at the smaller one, the bigger one. And I think it's best to remember that the folks may think they need the small one, but I think, when they hold it for 2 weeks, if they don't break the cardboard down enough, they're gonna need a larger one. But that's all coming together pretty good. I mean, there's been a lot of input, a lot of orders. So
Yeah, Sean's going around to all of the condo associations, and he leaves the carts there on site for a couple of days so people can view them, and he meets with the condo associations. And we have our forms up on the website so people can change their cart, whichever they want, because the default is the 95.
there's a lot to the condos, but we get out of the truck now and go into a shed. We have different agreements and we need to meet with them, let them know that maintenance has to put them out. So that we drive up, grab them and go, rather than get out of the truck. That's the intent of the whole program. So, and that's going very well and well received. I haven't heard any really pushback or anything on that. So, that's the overview.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
Unless Council Healy has anything to add.
I'd just like to thank both of you for all your hard work. I mean, my role was really, once the document was kind of in a rough draft, just ran through, did some grammatical things, housekeeping, but they really did the legwork. So thank you. And I'd like to thank you for your premonition to actually think about the need for new recycling equipment, because I don't know where we'd be if we'd have to fund $2 million for you and then 1.9 for a fire truck right now. So this grant and your efforts in this is really appreciated by the city. And I think you've done a fabulous job with this. I remember when we first sat down, we kind of looked at it and we're like, how are we gonna make this work, the old one? So getting the news that we could strike out the whole document was probably the best thing we heard. Because that was a struggle. But once we heard that, Athena took it and ran, and she's done a great job.
Clerk Scott, I met with Clerk Scott. She took one look at it and I said, are we striking all this out? No, you got the right idea. If you want to just delete the old one and start over, we'll be better off. Okay, thank you. I was glad you're saying.
I'm also very thankful that she clarified in the committee
Yes.
chairs that I don't have to read the whole thing. So
Wow.
Is that how I got the email? No.
Hey,
Wow, I never
figure
thought
out
of that.
that little squiggly line and how to make that. And it took me hours just to put that all through the document. But yeah,
Where can I find that symbol? I can't find it.
I found it.
Is it a name?
The section symbol.
It's a section
Okay.
symbol, and it's actually in Word. You just have to cut and paste it in.
Yeah, she sent it to me. This will be easier.
I did send it.
That's what you sent to me.
So I did convert all the previous ordinances into Word, and I mushed them all together, and then I added everything that's new into it. And we do have that struck out if you want to have that. I sent net.
Yeah, I can leave my copy behind. I can, whatever.
That'd be great.
And then some of the ones that I actually stole from is 372-1, the regulatory authority and intent, because I thought we needed more of an emphasis on that than we do. The DPW is in control of this, the mayor has control of it. And then some of that language I took from Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and West Springfield, and Dartmouth and West Springfield. So that's kind of where that came from. The definitions I took because most ordinances have definitions, and it was really a good way to explain some of why we require things and why we have aseptic containers as a mandatory recycling or thing. And so, and that's all explained in there, and so I did all of that. They were either things that I just researched and or took out of my history and or from other ordinances. So that's the bulk of that. And then lots of different things.
So are you starting to go through the ordinance?
Do you want me to do that, or
Not-
how would
not-
you rather
Not
ask
yet. No, I
questions?
think, yeah,
Okay.
I think how about we shift to any initial impressions and then going through the ordinance like we did the last one with questions.
Okay.
Is that good?
Yep.
I just want to start by saying this ordinance is incredibly well written. Like it was like, I understood it. I mean, so many ordinances are written in some strange language. I don't know why. That is like half understandable, half not. And I didn't have to reread sentences. That's a big deal. Like, this is just very well
It
written.
should be readable. 'Cause,
It should
you know,
be,
that
but
people should look at it.
I have promised Clerk Scott that I will not put on my editor hat with the entire city
No,
code.
please, if you
And
want.
I promised the city council that I will not spend their time that way. But this is like, it's incredibly well written and understandable.
Thank you.
So that's my first, that's my biggest.
Everybody has
comment.
track, so you know.
Yeah.
And this way people can understand
Yeah.
it. They can
Yeah.
read it and not, and yeah, it's readable.
Well, the signs at the transfer station will say, well, what is waistband? How come that isn't accepted? What are you talking? Well, it's in the ordinance.
And it's legible, and it's.
Yeah.
It's legible for, it's not in weird order.
Like recycling can't go in the trash. That's
Yeah.
considered waistband going in the trash, has to be recycled.
And that's also explained in a couple of places, like the definitions and then under waistband, so.
Yeah, so how about we shift to any other initial impressions and then going into questions?
This is a very minor thing, but the only, so what Counselor Golub said also is true. Like, this is incredibly well written and, not as a trash expert, but it all made sense to me. So there's nothing substantially that I think should change. I did wonder about the kind of sticker that will go on the carts to shame people, like what it's gonna look like if they put the wrong stuff in.
But we have.
Is it actually in there?
No, but I
saw that there's
we
like
met with the
a
cart
shame
people.
sticker,
No. Oh, that'll be an oops tag.
Okay.
And that's
Similar to when a
Much
trash
better
bag.
shame
is over-
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got one on my
Yeah.
trash bag.
You don't call it that?
Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah.
I mean, that's a good question. We had to incorporate how we accepted the grant into the ordinance a little bit, like inspection, quality assurance and all.
Yeah, and so that is.
Because that'll be the
explained.
first year, once the trucks roll out, that Sean shifts gears from the office and so all that stuff had to go in there, so.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, Sean will be riding around with the drivers, he'll be looking into carts, and then they'll put the oops tag on, or he'll meet with the resident, he's gonna have a iPad or something around there, so he can record all the houses and get back with them.
Great. Yeah, so how about we shift to just specific questions about the ordinance?
That's as substantial as my questions are gonna get, unfortunately.
No other questions? Those are your only question?
That's all I had.
Do you have any other questions? I have more questions, but.
I know, I wish I was doing better.
I had more time in the past few days than I have.
No, I just.
I wish I had to go through it.
I read it and I wrote the questions when I read it. You and I.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I actually don't have specific questions because this is very comprehensive, and I have so much appreciation for that. I think my only concern, and this is not really an ordinance question per se, but more of a like rollout question, is just like, I think it's very clear. I also think that very few people are going to read a 16-page ordinance, right? So like the communication plan that sort of breaks down like, okay, what does everybody actually need to know? What's changing?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm sure
That should be in
Sean's
all of our
on
outreach and it is in our
Yeah, that's been
outreach,
all the outreach meetings, which
Yeah.
is required under the grant too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, the training portion of it, they're actually gonna go out, ride, say, hey, you can't do this, you can't do this, and do some outreach that way, right? So
Yeah.
people will fully understand and buy into the system. And then from there, it should, yeah, are they gonna be a rocky couple months? Probably,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, we anticipate.
But it's to be expected. I think,
It's hard, yeah.
I think in the long run, you'll find that, like, from a labor standpoint, that it's gonna be more efficient, safer. You're gonna have, you know, less time driving around in 1-ton pickup trucks, which is a nightmare for them right now, you know, so
May want breaks.
the first 2 months of a little pain are gonna be a lot of pleasure later
Yeah.
on, in my opinion, but
Great.
but that's all stated in here, how they're gonna do that. I think there's also, we did spend some time on the portion with, you know, penalties. Cause at first we started with monetary penalties and I didn't feel like it was, especially in today's economy, to have like a monetary penalty assigned with like not being able to pay it. So it was suspension of services, which I thought was fair.
I
And that
thought
was,
that actually made a ton of sense.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, the whole thing with fines and everything, I mean, the time it takes to even accomplish it is
Mhm.
well beyond what the fines are.
Yeah.
So that was a very good idea, Councilor
that's
Gillies, to go that route because we want to entice this new program. We want to entice recycling. We want to increase recycling. So I totally concur that actual fines, I think, would work against us.
yeah.
Yeah, and unless something happens to our grant, we'll have Sean for 2 years,
Okay,
Yes.
great.
you know, but so you'll be able to do all of the education.
Wow, we got well over half of it already.
Okay. So, okay, if I ask some questions? Okay. It may, and these questions may be answered somewhere, but they were coming up as I read them. For folks with disabilities who use a wheelchair, what is that written here? Like what happens?
There's,
Well, there's a sign up form and we didn't address it specifically in the ordinance because but we do have accommodations. There will be
Yes.
accommodations. They sign up on a form or where Sean's talking with them. We don't know exactly how it's gonna happen, but right now, what we're planning is one of the supervisors will go around in their pickup truck and they will pick up the bins who people put
Okay.
out at the
Yeah,
curb.
an example is, the crew chief at the solid waste department division of the transfer station. He comes down, does the street cans every morning. The parking garage picks up trash, so on and so forth. So we'll probably have that list on each day. He'll make those rounds since it's like, we're not sending an extra truck. He's already downtown.
Yeah.
And he would go out. That's what we're working on that.
Okay.
piece.
Yeah, or like you said, it would be on Fridays
Okay.
and our crew chief. So we'll have all of that though in promotional material.
Okay,
And mainly, we want to make sure that people actually need that assistance because we can't have hundreds of people asking to keep their bins. And, you know, because that would be a huge expense for the city and for the supervisors.
Totally.
'Cause
totally.
they
And
just
it
don't
would
have that time.
be a lot of.
But we are
So-
addressing that and we are meeting regularly. I meet regularly with the CEA and get information from them when we promote our meetings is all of our meetings contain information about accessibility and on our form and how you can request that.
Okay, so I understand if all of the details can't be spelled out because they're emergent, but I think that it'd be helpful to have something,
It
and
is
it
in
may
there,
already
actually.
be here.
It
Yeah,
is.
thank you.
So
Okay.
it's
There's a section on
Car
the
exemption
accommodations. Yes.
program, so
Can I just
resident.
do that?
Yep.
Oh,
So,
I'm sorry, you didn't know there was a section on
well,
it. Yeah.
I I did not track that.
372-13, but I can add to
Perfect.
that if you think there needs to be more.
What page, that's some page,
So it's page
9.
21 of our packet.
yeah, page 21. Does that feel? Yeah. To me, that seems like it meets the need. It says, yeah,
I mean, the outreach is happening, right? So
Yeah.
that's gonna be something
Okay.
people are informed about.
Yeah.
thank you for.
And I believe
Okay,
we have a list.
Oh, yeah, he's he's created a list. We do have some people that want the service. We haven't had a lot of them. We're
Okay.
trying to get more
Great.
and more of the word out. And as we do the switch, we know we'll get more.
perfect.
I mean, the main complaint is people with long driveways who we say we're not going to accommodate you
No.
because you can't keep it in.
Okay, so I just I want to pause for a sec to see if see what questions, I'm just retracking. I'm looking at my questions to making sense of them. So I wrote giving notice. On page 21 of our packet, carts cannot be collected without causing possible damage. How will so I'm just aware of the time that we have tonight, and there's another piece of the discussion that we have to have, and just wanting to keep us I do want to name these questions, but also wanting to keep us. I use the word when I'm facilitating lead of speech, so that we can move through this conversation. And so no need to answer all the questions, but these may be, there may be ways that it's already named in the ordinance.
Are you allowed to send those to?
I am.
Why don't you, I mean, if you want to do that, I'm
Yeah.
happy to answer them via writing and whatever's legal for you guys to be.
It's legal. It's legal. It's also, it's also the time that outside of the meeting. So I'm just going to name a question,
Okay.
name a couple questions.
Yeah,
and see if
whatever
they are
works for
actual
you
questions.
is good.
So it says the carts that cannot be collected without causing possible damage to property or vehicles will not be collected until the resident corrects the problems. And I'm just wanting to, this was a question that you were kind of asking about giving notice, how will notice be given if they can't be collected? Will there be
All of
note
our
or-
promotion has that
We'll have that
the
answer.
parts have to be 3 feet away from everything.
Okay,
So that's all within our promotion.
that's all in the
yeah.
promotion.
And
Okay,
if it needs to go in the ordinance, I can do that, but it seemed like more of a promotional.
sure,
thing.
that's
Yeah.
fair. That's, and, I was.
And again, the cart will be tagged and Sean will actually get out and move the thing and
Okay.
then tag it,
And
so
it'll
that
be
we can Pick
tagged.
it up, yeah.
It'll be tagged. Tagged.
He'll be,
Okay.
that's why he's driving around
Great.
with them.
That answers the question.
Yeah.
I put a note next to expire.
Because we don't want to not pick up people's.
No, you
things,
don't.
so we just let it-
I was wondering that there's food scraps drop off. I just want, this is not actually a question, but I'm just naming that I'm holding a question around compost and,
That's
Part of
in
the
there,
city.
that we do talk about. the
Yeah,
background
we do.
collection.
um,
It's under the transfer station.
and when the modification of the policy, it says it both, 3726 and 37258. The DPW director and city mayor shall have the authority to create or modify as needed policies and procedures. I'm just wondering what is under the purview of the ordinance, what has to be changed by ordinance and what is changed by a director? And this feels like a general question. I
We
should
did
know
talk
the
about this
answer to.
actually.
Yeah,
And your response at the time was if there is a
Like
mass
an
general law
emergency.
change or a recycling change that where we can't wait to change it in an ordinance, they would have the authority to change that to meet those.
okay.
Like if DEP changes something that we accept or they'll now accept.
Okay.
If
Would
the
you,
market bottoms out on something and it doesn't make sense to collect it anymore, we can do like an emergency thing.
Okay.
Or if there's flooding everywhere and you can't do the collection.
Right.
Yes.
So
okay,
that's kind of that all means.
okay,
So one of those pieces that you kind of leave open ended, like when the mayor and I review charges and stuff like that too.
Keeps flexibility.
We review them yearly. I think we've got that in here too.
okay, that's fair, and that makes sense. The only part, the ordinance that I had a hard time reading was the enforcement part, to be honest.
Okay, That's at the
And
very end.
yeah, and it felt like and it also felt like a particularly important part of the ordinance for people to understand. And so actually this would be helpful for us to, if we could go back and forth, if it would be possible to share this in a Google Doc, just,
Sure.
it felt like some paragraph breaks and I was like, how is the enforcement different than in 37260, 37261? Like, how is it different?
Yeah, I think 60 is more of the general thing. But yeah, I'm open. It's a lot that, I mean, there really wasn't anything in our old ordinance much
Right.
about enforcement at
Yeah.
all. And so I took some things from the old ordinance, but mostly from other ordinances, and then I just wrote things in
Yeah.
that just seemed to make sense.
And if I recall, Marlo, it referred to another section that, like,
Right,
we didn't even know
it was-
existed, and
right.
Kathy didn't even
Yeah,
know
Kathy
existed.
said, I
Yeah.
learned something
Like-
today when I met with her. She found, when we were talking about fines or whatnot, she went into that and she says, well, you just hang on, I can read this, I've never been.
Yeah. There's so much there.
I'm what? Leave it tomorrow, it'll bring up something.
Yeah.
So I guess my request would be, if you could look at those pieces, like, and it seems like there's some redundancy and it felt a little confusing.
Okay.
So if you could take that as like, could you make that a little bit easier to understand and send it to me? That would be helpful before we just pass this, because I think.
Send it as a Google Doc?
Yeah,
Okay.
then I can share thoughts, because I think that I'm really glad that you all are including enforcement. I think that's incredibly important. And I want that to be crystal clear to also avoid you all having to explain it. Like, when you're on the phone with people having to take your time to do that, the clearer that this can be now, the easier your all job will be. Yeah.
Actually, there's one other piece that I do have a question about, just because it came across my field of vision here. Article 4, leaf and yard waste, very much in this vein of like making things as clear as possible. It's section 372-31 on page 25 of the packet. I don't know how this language compares to what was in the previous ordinance, because I didn't have a chance to go back and look. But this one, I think, does read confusing to me, because it says all leaves and grass have been banned from disposal at the transfer station. Yard waste may not be set out with regular trash. And then the next sentence is leaves, grass clipping, and brush are accepted at the transfer station. And that
Oh,
Seems like a
you know what,
contradiction.
I think you're right. What it needs to say there is it can't be disposed of in the trash.
in the trash that's being. picked up.
Yes.
Yeah, that was all.
Except for
from
the
other
leaves,
one,
like,
but
Yeah.
it's
scheduled for pickup, right?
anyway.
Yeah, so I
Cannot
think
be
those two paragraphs
disposed.
could be made
You gotta
clearer.
word it so that it doesn't go over the wall, dumpster, or the trash trailer. It's gotta go down because we take leaves
Right,
and brush.
right. So, yeah, that's just one.
We
that I think
eliminated
is-
taking out trees less than 8 inches in diameter and stumps.
Yeah,
That was in the old ordinance, and it's like, where do you put stumps and trees?
right. I saw that was in here. Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, just making sure that it's clear.
Yeah.
What
No, that's a good.
will be
catch.
picked up, what won't be picked up, what you can and can't take to the transfer station.
And if you could send that to us again as soon as possible, as far from the 5-day rule as possible, so that we can look at it and share any thoughts before it goes to committee chairs, and so we can just, I hope,
Yeah.
hopefully just approve it. And under motions next, I would feel comfortable putting this under, having this in, what do you all think? Having this
April
under
meeting.
motions at the April meeting and
Yeah.
then pass.
Does that
Yeah,
work?
if you all are ready for that. then
Timeline
people
wise?
makes-
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
whatever
mean,
works for you guys.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, we want to make sure everything's done right too. but
Yes,
The sooner
no, of course.
we have this gives us the marching order, so to speak,
Yeah.
to, if the trucks come sooner and all of a sudden we get it out there, we're gonna start the last week of June or something.
Yeah.
I don't think that's gonna happen. but
No, we have to wait for car people.
Sooner the
Yeah.
better, but,
I think
that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
It'd be nice to have that on the agenda where.
it's all appreciated. It made it.
So we don't need to come back to you unless you want us to, but it'll be ready for April, so we'll drop it in a Google folder and. make
Yeah, I
it
think we take the time now to send over the Google Doc,
Okay.
have any more clarifications made, so in the
Okay.
next committee chairs meeting, they could put it forward, and then at that point, it's ready
Okay.
for a further
Mhm.
review.
Do
Final.
I request, because I had to request this through Kathy with Counselor Healy chiming in, do I have to do that all over again for committee chairs?
No.
Or is that
Do you
some?
mean, do you have to come to committee chairs to present?
No, to get on.
get it on.
No,
to
it
get
should
on
already be
committee
carried.
chairs. Do I have to do that?
No,
It's gonna
I-
stick around until we
yeah,
dispose
it's,
of it. either
yeah.
by
It's already on the
council.
agenda.
Yeah,
so it will
it's
roll.
just-
Okay, all right, I just.
yeah,
wanted to make sure I didn't
ordinance.
miss the 5-day rule and I had
Yeah,
to send another
no.
memo.
So this is, yeah, you're in, but for us, it's a good point. I would just be grateful to have it as soon as possible.
And what, by as soon as possible, it's next week, okay?
It's
Oh, absolutely.
wonderful. I'm not looking at the next couple of days, it's great.
Midnight tonight.
I have no time for the next few days. No, no, that's fine. And you all, I don't feel a need for you all to come and present at the next A and O. I think it'd be good for you to be there at
At full
full
council.
council, but
I'll be
Oh,
there.
definitely, yeah.
I have to be there. I believe.
yes, so.
No, I'll definitely be there.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
And I can also.
I'm going next week.
Yeah.
For next, for the, you know.
Oh, right.
Okay, I mean, it'll be us and the other committee members hopefully, and I don't think that you need to.
Okay.
Do you
I don't
feel
think-
any? I don't think so. I don't imagine any drastic changes, so yeah,
Right.
it's good.
Wow. It's good.
This is a ton of work. Thank you.
Yeah.
Front loaded it all.
You guys.
Yeah.
You remember when I took the $800,000 match?
Yep.
We're logging a lot of hours behind this.
Yeah.
I only wish I had more questions, but.
Yeah, if you come up with other ones, just let me know.
Yeah.
After we talk about it, making changes, so. Yeah.
No, that's very good.
So sorry.
That was all out last March.
We'll make up for
I
it.
think I always try and do it that way. every time.
Thank you all so much for doing your homework, because I
Yeah.
know you guys are tremendously busy and definitely underpaid.
It's easier if we do our homework before you're here and then we go on our questions and then, yeah.
All right.
Good.
We're getting pretty excited. You get the warm weather. We
Yeah.
Have a snowstorm in our rearview mirror and
Oh, my God.
working on this. It's like, it's getting close. It's getting close.
I'm excited this is coming partly because my, one of my recycling bins blew away in one of the very.
Yeah,
early
these
days.
carts are really heavy.
And, like,
That's
gone,
gonna help.
like not just like some things that
Yeah.
are blue, the other one like flew
Yeah.
down the street, this one's gone.
We get numerous calls on Davis Street. How come they took my recycle bin with the
Yeah.
recycling? Davis Street is a wind tunnel.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Yeah.
where do they go?
Exactly. Looking for the stocks to go from the tire.
You can start to notice your neighbor with an extra recycle. Hey, blew on my property. Okay.
It's not-
That's
that
all
is
the
not-
cardboard.
Stole my
and paper
bin.
that flies
For
around.
$4. Thank you so much.
No,
Thank
Thank
you.
you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
There's nothing else in there.
Yeah.
That has like me.
No.
Actually, I would love to keep a copy of that.
There
Yeah.
are copies available. Like,
Thank
You can
you.
have mine.
That'd be great.
You should
Awesome.
have one.
you want that?
Sure, do you?
Athena has hers. We have it electronically too. I mean, that would.
You know,
Either way.
Electronic
yeah.
is probably better, honestly.
But we can send it along electronically and I have my hard copy if you want.
I mean, I imagine there'll be more.
Did you give it away, Marlos? No, that must have been mine.
I don't
Yeah, I'm perfectly
honestly.
comfortable getting the.
Okay, yeah, because I.
I put them on two screens.
Mine's gone.
So we
so-
could certainly send it to you electronically. I can pop it in
I'm
Google
good.
folder.
Questions are answered.
You can devise stuff around.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, the thing that's on our agenda is the discussion of our process of like, what are we gonna do next?
Right.
Yeah.
The ordinance review.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Have a good night.
You want to hear my report on the 2015 ordinance?
Yeah, so what I'm thinking, I have a few thoughts, and I,
Sorry.
yeah.
One more question. just because it's in my precinct, the mobile home park that's like at the top end of French King Highway, they don't get municipal trash pickup, right?
There is. a
The
mobile
one on
home
Adams
park.
Road?
Yeah.
Yes,
Do
they
they-
do.
So they're covered by
They've
this?
been meeting
Yes.
with Sean and
Yeah.
Sean's been out
Okay,
there a
great.
bunch.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
In
And they
fact,
come to
they're-
our public meetings as well.
Oh, good.
They're
Okay.
reorganizing to solidify it rather than like
Yeah.
8 stops going around it.
Fabulous. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's an apartment complex we do, and they were at our last public meeting, and Sean's been meeting with them. We're
Wonderful.
getting the
Same with
word
the condo
out,
complex
so
up here, Field
they
Street.
know to
Oh, yeah,
call us.
right.
So,
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Want to make sure that I'm
and we're meeting with the
Keeping them in
schools.
No stone left unturned.
Gone around to all the nonprofits, and we're gonna do a city meet the cart thing too.
Oh,
for
fabulous.
city employees and for all the
Great.
custodians.
They showed up so prepared tonight.
They have thought about everything.
Last electric card day or?
Yeah. Yeah, and feel free to email me.
Yeah.
Okay,
Can be.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. So I talked at committee chairs, you were there. I asked Clerk Scott, just in accordance with open meeting law, how do we talk about our process? And is it enough to just say what she says in the agenda now? And she emailed me back and she said, yes.
Great.
So, I'm thinking there's a few to like review the things that we talked about and then just holding us all. And I think we can all do this, but just being lean of speech, with time, but like, so I'm thinking review, there's a few different things to review, including, so I'm thinking, I wrote based on our notes, guiding principles and questions. I did submit a letter to the editor, just inviting participation. Sure. The 20, brief, what you've discovered from the 2015 search responses from the directors, just briefly, I can tell you what came back. And then next steps, like how do we do this together? And I have some thoughts about that. So in terms of the review, the first thing I just want to say too, just so, because I know this is your first time on appointments and ordinances, and it may be completely obvious, but I just want to be clear that how our agendas happen is that there's things that are motions, which are things that we're anticipating voting on, and things for discussion that, like tonight, we don't anticipate voting on. But if anything ever comes to us under discussion and we feel like there's no questions, that it's totally ready to go forward, we can motion to recommend that at our meetings. So just want to, for process sake, I said that I submitted a letter to the editor, just like, you can give public comment or you can email me and I'll share it with the subcommittee. This thing is happening. Do you want to give just briefly what you discovered?
There was no process in 2015. That's what I discovered. There was zero, there was no discussion about it, nothing. And basically what they spent I can tell you what they spent their year on. They were gonna do regulations to allow everyone to sell flavored tobacco, ironically, considering where we are.
What? Sell flavored tobacco?
Yeah, they wanted to make sure there was no limits on flavored tobacco. Yeah, that was the thing.
There's a lot changes.
Yeah, basically, everything was written by Isaac Mass. He wrote
Mhm.
almost every ordinance. He was on that committee. They would constantly refer to him to write stuff, which makes sense.
He's a
It's the
lawyer, right?
Let's see. They spent 9 months working on modifying the public assembly language. So that was from January to September. They did end up passing that.
They did pass it?
Yep. And so basically it was just like balancing. Honest to God, it was mostly about parades and when you can do a parade. And they decided you need to get a permit to do a parade. There was a bunch of charter amendments. They spent 6 months trying to figure out if they wanted to make it so you could vote in the affirmative to confirm somebody versus just voting against it. And then they ended up not doing it at all. So that just didn't happen. Let's see. They changed the composition of SGIC to get rid of the planning director. I'm sorry, not the planning director, Amy Kalian's position, economic. Yep, and replaced that with Carol Collins's position in the energy department. Let's see. This one actually is probably the most applicable of all of them. The streets and sidewalk clearing ordinance that they passed created higher penalties. So there's a whole bunch of testimony about how this isn't actually enforced, which is one of our operating kind of concerns.
Right.
And their solution was to increase the fines. And I don't,
It's.
right, I mean, we're living in a world, right, where people don't clear their sidewalks. And the idea was that the person who does ticketing for parking would do the clearing of the sidewalk issue, which makes a ton of sense. But we have a half-time person doing that job and they don't work at
Right.
night and during snowstorms.
Right.
So like, that's a great example of an ordinance that like, I think that one's actually probably the one that I got the most out of for this process here. Because they made a change to make it more enforceable. They made it so every 24 hours of, and this one did pass. So every 24 hours of non-cleared sidewalk, it's, you do the fine again and again, again, and again. The person who's supposed to enforce it basically has a half-time job and there's nobody enforcing it, which is why it doesn't happen.
Right.
So that was something. Plastic bag ban. And another thing they did a lot of was referring ideas that were brought before A&O to non-binding referendum at the ballots. And so like the plastic bag ban that eventually happened started off as a ban on water bottles, plastic water bottles, styrofoam containers, single-use utensils. And I know we have a plastic bag ban. I don't think we have bans on those other things, but that was still going on in December. And so presumably in 2016, they worked on that. Anything else? Mass assemblies, no, non-binding resolution on plastic bags. Again, like a lot of this stuff just kept going and going and going and going. Yes, the tobacco one lasted until November and then they just didn't do it. Oh, another one, they did establish a commission to look at city official salaries. And in December, they finally created the commission. And it was an ad hoc commission that said the mayor needs a raise. And that was it. And so that's what they did. Like that's-
Okay, thank you
Right.
for that. Well, we are creating a process to do this and hopefully it can be replicated by future councils.
Oh, I'm
So
thrilled.
Thank you
It's-
for being part of
yeah.
this.
Yeah, no, I'm really grateful. You're in charge of the committee and you actually care. No one has ever cared about this as much as you. And like, that's a compliment, honestly. Like, it really is. It's a, but yeah, no, 2015, they didn't even mention it.
I've never been accused of not caring.
I don't think any of us have.
Yeah, exactly.
Same.
Okay, well, thank you for that research. That's actually interesting history. I will, anything else you want to say about that? No, thank you for
Yeah.
doing that research. That's actually really like, it's interesting to hear that.
It was interesting just to watch the process more than anything else. Like, I feel like I learned a lot about what the council was like a decade ago.
Fascinating.
And contentious
It
was
was,
the
it
answer.
was different.
It was different.
It was different.
Yeah. So I, ready to move on?
Yeah,
Yeah?
100%.
Okay, cool. So I took all the notes from the last meeting and shared with you. I also have it written if you want to see it, but I emailed it to
Oh, I
all
heard
of
you
you.
just looking at the email.
Like just setting guiding principles and questions, and that equity, and I guess I don't know. I don't know that this needs to go beyond us. I mean, it's in the record now. The guiding principles of equity, enforceability, and expense, just like guiding of those being things that we ask about as we make our decisions.
I love that it's, there's alliteration.
Yeah,
Is that
right?
alliteration or assonance?
Alliteration.
Thank you.
I wasn't, I liked it too. It wasn't, that was easy.
It
It was
really
in the notes.
pleased me when I saw
I
that.
wish that there was like equity is kind of positive, enforceability. It's not like we're going for expense,
Hmm.
right? Like but asking questions about these things. So, and you have these questions that I wrote out and can you ask Tammy to submit this to the packet just so it's there for public record? Thank you. And Tammy's taking notes, so Tammy, it's in the.
Was that the note taker that's in?
No, that's a good point. Is there an
Good pop-up.
AI? Is there an
Well,
AI
it
note?
happened last night too,
I noticed that.
but it's not, I don't know if it's connected to
I didn't s-
anybody.
I don't know.
I mean, it's public record, so
Anyway.
making notes on a public meeting is,
Yeah.
It's an
Yeah.
AI thing or something.
yeah, I don't know if that's, it would make
Huh.
sense if our clerk did it because it might make their lives easier.
Right. She does watch all these videos and type up the.
Right.
It's crazy.
So I'm just gonna say that out loud.
Thank you.
It's my responsibility to ask people if they're recording. So if it's not the city that's recording.
Oh, no, it's definitely via Zoom.
Okay.
It showed up when I was
Cool.
watching EDC last night. It came up on my little Zoom screen.
Cool, okay. So what I would like to just invite you both to do is to look at the ordinances, just so I can orient us for a moment. What's
Like, go to
my,
the city code.
yeah, if you could open up the city code. Folks watching, you can also open up the city code if you'd like.
But no, the last time I've closed the city code. It's just open all the time, in my
Tab
browser.
actually in the corner.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just how fun.
More right,
Yeah.
it's like
Cool
not,
people.
oh, there you go. Okay, so I do not have mine open yet. So Greenfield, E-code, there we go. So we just asked all of the directors of all the departments to let us know if there's any changes that they wanted. And we heard back a few. We heard there's going to be the Council on Aging is rewriting their piece. There's a new kennel fee from the clerk's office. There will be a new piece coming through from Christian from the Crossroads about the Crossroads Cultural District and Arts Council. And then there's minor changes to parking permits, minor changes from the planning boards, from the Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee, and minor rules of procedure changes, all relative. I mean, minor is up for interpretation, but all relatively small. And so I asked Tammy to have those on our agenda for next month. And as I looked at the E-code, it can be divided up into, and again, thanking Quinn, because we have the spreadsheet with all for their very hard work. All of these are now in the spreadsheet.
That's amazing.
It's amazing. It's a gift. It's a gift that we
Share
can.
that spreadsheet with us yet, have I seen?
Oh,
I was gonna say, I don't think that
I have not seen it.
oh, you have
I've been
not seen
told
it.
How amazing it is, and I've seen it.
Oh.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm like, where do I write that note in order for me to remember it?
And that's a.
Would you do me a favor?
Sure.
Would you email Quinn and ask them to share the spreadsheet with all ANO members?
Okay,
Thank you very much.
what do I, I'll just call it ordinance reviews.
Yeah, they'll know what we're talking about. So if we look at the E-code, we can see that it is basically divided up into 4 parts. Administration. So this is kind of my current thinking. Like, how do we, our like $2,000 stipended, full-time working, current and multiple caretaking responsibilities people review the code, especially given that there's relatively minimal recommendations from our departments. And it is just beyond the scope of our humanness to read every single ordinance in here. And so as I was thinking about, and there's a part of me that's like, I would really like us to review the whole thing, right? Like in an ideal world, like that would be great. And so as I was thinking about this is kind of an idea to share with you both, is that you can see that it's broken up basically into 3 parts. There's the administrative legislation, there's boards, commission, committees, and other governing bodies, there's general legislation, and then there's, scrolling down, rules and regulations of other bodies. And I would say that we can propose changes. It is within our purview to propose changes on any of these parts. And I am trusting that the bodies that hold the pieces in that are relative to the pieces in the basically part 1, 2, and the last part will have submitted changes to us if they think that that's necessary. Like there's been a first go with those. We can, if we want to change those, propose changes. But what I'm thinking is that if we want to read like a big thing, if we want to work on it, like be comprehensive in some way, then perhaps general legislation is the area that we are comprehensive about.
That makes sense.
And that amongst the hopefully 5 of us, kind of split that up, that at least one of us has read at least, besides zoning, at least that everything has been read by at least one of us.
Mhm.
I think that feels like a reasonable ask for us. And I see you both nodding to that. That's kind of like the first.
We just need time.
Yeah, we need time and we have time. And so pacing. One of my favorite quotes of all time is love is 90% pacing. I don't know what that means, 90%, but it's like pacing is how we do life well. So, and relationships well, and we are all in relationship with each other. So, so that's kind of my question. Like one is, shall we hold an aim or a commitment to each other that we're into the city, like basically the city, that somebody is going to read all of the general legislation. So all of the general legislation will be read by at least one of the A&O members during the year. And if that person feels compelled to present amendments, that person will. Minus sign.
Makes sense to me. It looks like there's 48 sections, if I'm counting that correctly, under general legislation.
Some of them are way longer than others.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
like streets and sidewalks, and there's some, yeah. Does that,
Right.
I think that does make sense. I think there are areas I'm just looking at electrical standards. Like I can absolutely read that. And I am not an electrician, so I know that I would need some help with understanding whether this code is up to code,
Yeah.
lack of a better phrase.
yeah,
And again, just making sure it's in bite-sized chunks would be my main request on this, like 3 chapters a month or 2,
Yeah.
whatever it might be. I also don't think it's a bad idea necessarily on some of the ones that we think we may be interested in working on to double up. If several people wanted to look at streets and sidewalks, I think we would probably be served by that, considering that's an area where we are likely to want to make changes.
yeah,
Thinking about like, we have cars that park right next to sidewalks, which is crosswalks, which is incredibly dangerous, right? Like that's just something that comes to mind immediately. But there are other things that people might think about.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think that is a good point, because there are some things that are gonna be bigger and more people, as opposed to like, I don't think any of us is gonna have strong feelings about mercury thermometers
I mean,
ordinance.
you
So,
presume to know me.
I'm making an assumption,
All right.
but
Correct.
I feel pretty solid on that. Yeah,
Yeah, no, I just read it and it took me 30 seconds.
exactly.
Okay, so what do you think about, and then also part of our doing our job is if whoever takes the electrical piece is tasked with asking someone else.
Right.
I think that
And
makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, we have the expertise within the city to do that. So you just asked Quinn, or you sent the
I
email?
did something.
Thank you very much. So you'll all see the spreadsheet, and it has all the codes in it, all 4 parts. So if you have interest in looking at other parts, you can, like
Okay.
that's that, I guess, let's say that is up, so things that I'm hearing us agree to is that presenting amendments to the other 3 sections is optional. We can do that. We are holding a collective commitment to having someone read all of the general legislation, you know what I mean? And to intentionally pacing ourselves through this stuff.
One thing I just thought about with this spreadsheet, if we're using it for the work of this committee, we're going to need to make sure the public's able to see it.
Yeah,
So we're not violating, so read only, link or something in our agenda,
yeah,
for even next month, right? Like,
Yeah.
we haven't used it yet, so we're fine as far as open meeting law is concerned.
yeah.
But I guarantee you, people will rightfully ask to see it.
What is it? Yeah.
Mhm.
That's true. Could you add that to Quinn?
Sure.
Thank you.
I actually may send that to,
Tammy, that's more of like a Tammy thing. And we may double up if we want to. Okay, so then the next question is, can we all commit in the next, like, what is the number? Like, if there's 48, but they're all different lengths, like, what is the pace? What is the right size pace with this? Like, I was thinking we all commit to reading 3 per month, but I'm not sure, and what that math ends up being. I don't know. Counselor Gilmore, this is the second meeting that she.
I'm
Oh,
pretty
aren't you?
confident this is going to be the last month we see Counselor Gilmore on the council.
Okay,
Hopefully we see her in the neighborhood. But
okay,
I know I don't know if she won or not, but she was running for her union at UMass's presidency, which is
well,
a big job.
That's a big job.
So,
that's a big job.
yeah, I imagine that will end up being her commitment. I don't want to speak for her.
Okay, so hopefully we'll have 5 members. Hopefully we're dividing this amongst 5 people, and I will also, I asked Counselor Bottomley to watch this. I will also email him and say that we are committing to whatever we commit to. So there's 48 divided by 5. I'm not sure if we want to do it that way or.
Right.
If we,
I mean, if there were 5 of us and we each read 3 things a month, we'd actually get through it pretty quickly. I don't
yeah,
think that that's gonna happen exactly, but
that's a good point. And when I hear you say that, what I think is that maybe we want to get through the basic reading pretty quickly.
well, that's what I'm thinking too, is
Yeah.
the faster we get through the basics, the more time we'll have to spend on actually figuring out whatever it is that we need to figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds wise. So
I also think realistically, it is gonna take us a little bit longer than just that plain math, but
yeah, yeah. So how do you feel about us committing to putting our names in the next couple of days in the spreadsheet
mhm,
so that we know who's taking the lead and on 3 things?
Mhm.
And then
great.
so then I'm thinking out loud again. Okay, so you both agree to that?
Yep.
Agree? Okay. So committing to 3, and then the next question is. I need to talk to the clerk about this because then my next question becomes, we want to discuss that. Like, what if there were 15 things that everyone wanted to discuss? Hopefully there's like at least half of those that we don't want to make changes to.
Right.
Hopefully the majority we don't want to make changes to. But what happens if we do? I'm going to talk this through with Clerk Scott.
I
Do you have any
missed
thoughts about this?
a lot of that conversation, as I was typing that email.
Sure. Yeah, I'm going to repeat it. Yeah. So my question, what I'm thinking out loud, we've all agreed that we're going to put our name next to 3 and read 3 in the next month. And we're going to ask the other counselors to do this as well.
Okay.
I will ask the other counselors to do this as well. So then the question becomes, hopefully the majority of it, we don't want to change. The more work it's.
Right.
But
And if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Exactly.
right. If we do want to change a lot of them, what do we do when we want to discuss them? I think that the best thing to do will be to put each one individually on the agenda so that the community knows what we are
Absolutely.
discussing.
Yeah.
And I just want to confirm and see if Clerk Scott has any other creative ideas about how to do that. That's my assumption, that each one of those will just go on for discussion. So that then makes it so that if you want to discuss something, you'll need to say, we had a conversation about the 5-day rule at committee chairs, and Kathy was like, please, she was basically saying, please respect the 5-day rule. So if you want it for discussion next month, please put it on, please read it in the next couple of weeks.
I
so
do
that you're
have
able
one
to-
actually already I would like to discuss next
Okay.
month. I'm going to be meeting, so just a little, is this the appropriate time or you want to keep going through this? I can hold that to the end too.
Well, I don't want to discuss it I don't want to go into
No,
right now,
no,
we're just
no.
talking about our process, but
Yeah,
yeah.
Okay, so
You can name it, but I don't want us to begin to deliberate
absolutely
on it.
no. So there was a constituent meeting I was part of 2 weeks ago with somebody who's dealing with terrible issues with landlords.
Yep.
And out of that came a plan to meet with Matt Conway, who again is involved with many things. I'm going to sit down with him 2 weeks from now and talk about potential legislative solutions. So there's nothing that I have proposed, but I know nobody else is working on that specific issue right now. So that's something I'm interested in trying to pursue.
Okay,
And,
great.
so I'm going to, sit down with Matt, find out, he's done some research already, and he's going to share that with me. I have some resources that have been shared with me by a couple of different folks.
Okay,
And I'm going to bring that to the meeting. And I hope to have a discussion, not like have an ordinance ready to go.
Yeah.
About that particular kind of world of issues.
okay,
I can be more specific about a title for it, and we can just say like legislative solutions to repeat offenders of our health code or something.
But the question, so is that something that's in the current code, or is that?
That would be something
that you would be
new. No, there are
proposing?
already pieces, but basically
Okay.
tying together.
so here,
So which strikes me as a slightly different thing than
It-
reviewing the
Yeah.
code that we already have, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are ordinances that address this, but the question is, it gets to that enforceability piece. If they're not being enforced, why not? And that's basically the discussion that kind of came out of that
So
meeting.
it's an interesting question, because like, at what point do you
Right,
I'll,
tweak
Is
an
it
ordinance that
new,
already
or is it-
exists?
right.
Yeah.
yeah.
so
I don't know.
I have a thought about this. one just request for us all to hold, and I think we're already doing it right now, and just to be super mindful, because we're about to go like divergent, we're about to like cover a lot,
Right.
is we need to be super lean of speech. Like we need to be, so if there's like updates on things, like, okay, I looked at these 3 things and I'm working on changes. Like, I do want to bring forward. You weren't saying too much
Oh, okay.
right now. No, but what I'm saying is, for example, with the hybrid meeting ordinance, I didn't bring it up for discussion while I was still working on,
Oh, yeah.
you know,
Sure.
right? Like I worked out on it with the city for a long time before bringing it forward
That
for
makes sense, yeah.
discussion. And so I will want us to check in about the things that are on this spreadsheet so that we can hold our process well together. But if there's something that's not related to this, that is like
So I
a
can pull that to
fire.
May also.
Yeah, right. Like if it's just a fire burning in the background,
Right,
or like, you know, kindling, boiling, percolating in the
Whatever
background, whatever,
Yeah.
in the
We
background.
have the rest of our job as counselors to bring things up. and
Exactly.
New things.
So if
Yeah.
so if you're ready for discussion, or you want us to just know that you're working on it, totally feel free to put it on the agenda and just be like, hey, I want you to know that I'm working on
I
this.
just value feedback, honestly,
Yeah.
it's kind of like more
Mhm.
heads together is better.
Yeah. Yeah.
That does bring up an interesting question for me of like, when we say, bring these things for discussion, like, we probably have different idea or potentially have different ideas in our heads of like exactly what that means.
Yeah.
Like, because what I imagine you're thinking of is like, come with the proposal basically for like what you want to do, if you want to change something, or come ready to say, unless it's really like, I think we should change it, but we all have to decide it together. Like, so this is actually my question, like, how prepared
Mm.
should we be when we're ready to put something on the agenda for
Yeah.
discussion? Like, what level of kind of like proposal making or discussing, should we be bringing to this group?
Yeah, so I think I have a couple of different thoughts. One is, I would like, when we're putting our names by things, I would like to be able to know what you're working, but you know what? We're thinking this out loud, right?
Right.
We can email each other. It's part of the public record. That is in accordance with open meeting law. We don't have to put everything on the agenda to email like, hey, all, I've looked at these 3 things and I'm going to work on changes for this.
Right.
We don't need to look at this. And this is like a tiny tweak that I want to bring forward this month. We don't have to discuss everything here.
We should just be really careful about the parameters of that. So, and
Yeah, every single thing about this entire process has to go through the clerk, whether it's
Right.
Departments have to go through the clerk before it gets to me or us.
Mhm.
We all have to go through the clerk.
Right.
And that is then in accordance with the law.
Right. Just want to make sure that we're like
Super
sticking with notifying and not risking tipping into discussion.
And so I don't see us, I think that anything that we're talking about here should have a draft. There should be, I also think that we should be sponsoring things like, except for the things that are coming through, like the minor things coming through the department. What happened before I was chair was that there were many things that lingered because they didn't have somebody who was invested in enough. As you saw, when we had that backlog, somebody who cared, only things that somebody cares enough to put their name to should make it to the city council floor. So, and that the sponsor is also the lead. So I think if we're sponsoring a change, then we should bring some draft. Like I don't know that we need a fully formed, I would bring forward a fully formed ordinance, but what do you think? Like how
As
formed do you
fully
think?
formed as possible.
Yeah.
Like, I think we should all, like the commitment that I feel like I can make is getting it as far as I feel like I can
Exactly.
on my own, right? And like, at that point, it has to come, to other people for getting it the rest of the way there. But yeah, we should all, I think, be doing our diligence to get it as far as possible before taking the full committee's time.
Okay.
So, kind of,
But subjective, obviously, but
right.
Yeah.
in a way that matters.
just the example, like what Councilor Bullock brought tonight, right? Like that was a fully fleshed out thing, maybe more than we might have it fleshed out. Like that was, she had a committee basically.
I mean, that's a whole
Right.
new.
Yeah, and
thing, but
so
yeah.
that was pretty comprehensive and,
Yeah.
the questions we had were largely tweaks,
Yeah.
like, more than anything else.
Mhm.
So maybe not quite to that level, but that makes sense to have something that would be worth our time to discuss.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, we only have so much time at these meetings and like, I'm
Right.
thinking about next month with all the committees, all the departments and the stuff they're sending in. Like, I don't, think about what I was just discussing, like that absolutely needs to wait till May.
Yeah,
Because we have a
Mhm.
bunch of other stuff to discuss.
Right.
And that would
yeah,
also give more time to make sure it's worth doing. you know?
yeah,
Right.
So I'll
Yeah.
keep talking, I'll talk to Matt, I'll let you guys know how that discussion goes.
Yeah, right.
And I don't think it, would be inappropriate to just say like, hey, I had this, like in this context of the meeting, report out and say like, hey,
Mhm.
this discussion happened. I had,
yeah,
let's say 6 different versions of it. I'll get it down to 2.
Yeah.
And then I'll bring it to the committee next month.
Yeah,
Or something like
that
that.
sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's helpful to clarify. I appreciate the questions and kind of the framing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um,
So what I'll also do, just so that for other committee members who are going to be part of the process, it feels like we have landed some group agreements, and I will add them to this guiding principles and questions document, and also that the community can know, and I will send that to you, and if you have any tweaks to that, but just so there's a record of this
Mhm.
conversation, and then to add this to all of the conversations about our process
Mhm.
going forward.
Reminds me, so just thinking, I meant to say this earlier, when we were talking about the expense piece.
Mhm.
The question asks, what financial cost this is imposing the city? I also think administrative time cost is something that's significant.
Okay,
So that's, again, just being mindful.
Yeah, I think that's a good.
yeah, I agree. Yep.
This is very personal. As a teacher, we get a lot of mandates about filling in various pieces of paperwork and not
Yeah.
necessarily any time to do them.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm keenly aware of, like, hey, Desi comes up with this, regulation. Now
Yeah,
the IEP is 3 more pages, enjoy, and your day is the same number of hours.
Right,
no,
right. It's a different kind of unfunded mandate.
Exactly.
yeah, exactly. I
Contacts.
mean, that's money.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't
Well,
think
somebody's
time
labor.
equals money, but like that's what your labor needs to be paid for.
And
and-
capitalism, it
Yeah.
totally is, though.
Yeah.
Time is money.
Yeah. Okay. So we are agreeing to read all of them in general legislation, to read 3 at least this month and see what happens. And see if that's a good pace going forward. The person who takes the lead, part of that responsibility is finding an expert on if need be, if they feel the need to, you don't have to always get an expert, but if you feel the need, if you don't know anything about it, to ask somebody, we may double up.
Can I volunteer me and John for zoning?
No, we're not doing zoning.
Oh, that's right.
I would still look at that.
Actually, we'll just.
And you can, like, we are not committing, yeah, we can.
So we should
can.
specify it's everything else under general legislation.
Yes,
besides
that's
that.
right.
Yeah.
I forgot to ask this, but do you know why some chapters are missing? Why is there no chapter 2?
I wondered that too. I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay.
That's a great question.
I bet you Kathy knows.
We are committing to being lean of speech, but I might not write that one down, but that's it. We will take with the things that we bring here, we will update each other through the clerks.
Mhm.
Are we agreeing to this? Update through the clerk's office in writing, so that we don't just like very briefly.
Like each of us do a monthly update to the
Yeah.
committee about
I
where we're
read
at.
these
Yeah.
chapters. Yeah, that seems
Yeah.
really
Okay, and when do you think we should do that by?
before the 5-day.
It's, the only problem with that is that is 2 weeks. That's in 2 weeks.
Well, it doesn't need to be before the 5-day rule,
No,
right? Because it's really just like.
That's what I was-
communication.
Yeah, I'm just being,
Pardon me, but.
I'm trying to be mindful of how this month, looking at the various committee agendas went for me, and it was Sunday. I was looking at
Yeah.
everything on like EDC this week, for example.
Right.
Like I really, like, oh, shoot, I need to, think about this more.
Mhm.
Yeah, what do you think? What do you think is, because if you do have small edits, then you might want to submit it by the 5-day rule. Like, is 1, 2?
Well, the updates and the submissions are different things, right?
Yeah, so just
So-
Does reading things in 2 weeks feel like enough time for us to read 3 things in 2
I
weeks?
think it really just gonna depend on the months, to be perfectly honest, you know, like, if I have, April will be
Okay.
easy because it's school vacation week.
All
Yeah.
right, so we're all committed to send them at some point in the month we're not gonna set when exactly we're gonna do it. Okay,
And for updates, I think it's fine, because it's, as long as it's sent in time that Tammy has time to forward it and people have, you
yeah.
know, time
So,
to see their email
you know what, let's say at least by the
by
Friday,
the Friday before.
even by the Sunday before, because if
Yeah.
we get the weekend,
Right.
she gets it on Tuesday morning, by the Sunday before.
Yeah, that's fine.
I would like to nominate Rachel and I to look at chapter 385, streets, sidewalks and public places.
Yeah.
You can put your name in that first, there's several, and you'll see Quinn broke them down then by the subsections.
Okay.
So that'll be, yeah,
Want drainage.
and you'll, and we will bring things, when we bring them to the committee, they'll be as far as we were able to take them on our own.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that is up to.
Yeah.
Up to, like, what that means to us. And everything will have a sponsor, which will mean that everything has a lead on that project and somebody who cares enough to
Yeah,
say
that's
this
a
is
really
worth
good
my
idea.
time. Okay, great. I will write these up as a group agreements. Anything else for our process?
Again, I thank you
Great.
for caring more about it than anyone else in the city's history.
Well,
I mean,
That we have record.
yes, I did, it may.
Everyone who's
Exactly.
done all the work up till now.
Yeah, the city, we.
I don't want to, no shade meant to anybody else. That was not meant to be in it.
And we don't know what happened before 2015. There may have been a very thorough.
We weren't a city.
Before 2015, we were.
We were? When did it become a city?
2002?
Oh, I was totally wrong.
Somewhere.
I'm sorry, city councilors from 2010. My ignorance is shown.
And
I always thought it was 2005, but I know that I was.
And I am a process nerd. That's what Catherine does.
Very helpful.
Yes.
Catherine is a process nerd. So Catherine cares more about process than most anything else because it's relationships. We need to treat each other well.
It's also fundamental fairness.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
Can't have
let's,
law without due process.
we're governing, it's about governance.
Right.
That's what we're supposed to do. All right. So anything else about our process? My agenda is somewhere in this
That's the end of it.
pile of documents and
Is-
ordinances. That's the end, right? Or is that's here we are. Okay, so the next meeting will be held and you ready for this? Any other discussion that feels complete? Okay. On Wednesday, the next meeting will be held on Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. 6:30 PM at the City Hall Meeting Room, second floor, Zoom hybrid unless otherwise posted. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night.
Good night, Greenfields.
Bye.
Thanks.